when one of the most famous basketball players on the planet quietly climbed into his black SUV one cold March morning in 2019, no cameras, no publicist, no announcement of any kind, and drove himself to a broken-down car wash on a forgotten street in Newark, New Jersey. Nobody knew he was coming, not the city, not the press, not even the 71-year-old man crouched in the parking lot scrubbing road salt off a tire with a brush that needed replacing 3 months ago. That man's name was Neil Dupri, and 31 years earlier, he had handed a 16-year-old boy named Shaquille O'Neal a cracked mop handle and told him to get to work. Now here is the part that will stop you cold. Neil had been alone in that car wash for years. His wife was gone. His daughter had moved away. The equipment was failing. A bigger, shinier car wash had opened 2 miles down the road and taken most of his customers. Every morning, Neil unlocked the gate at 7 a.m. because closing it would mean admitting something he was not willing to admit. He kept going the way only certain kinds of people know how to keep going. Quietly, stubbornly, without asking anyone for anything. And then the black SUV pulled in, and the door opened, and Shaquille O'Neal, 7 feet tall, $400 million, 4 championship rings, one of the most recognized human beings on earth, walked across that cracked parking lot in a gray hoodie and said one word, just Neil's name, nothing else. They went inside the small, tilted office together. They drank bad coffee. They talked about 31 years of living. And then Shaq looked down at the floor, and he saw something in the corner near the filing cabinet that made him go completely still. One floorboard, sitting just slightly higher than all the rest. And what was underneath it had been sitting there since 1988, waiting, hidden by one of them, found by the other. And when Neil finally lifted that board and placed what was inside it into Shaq's hands, a grown man worth hundreds of millions of dollars sat down on the floor of a broken car wash in Newark, New Jersey, and could not speak. What was under that floorboard is something nobody saw coming. It is something that changes everything you think you know about who Shaquille O'Neal really is. Not the athlete, not the businessman, not the personality you have seen on television 1,000 times, but the man underneath all of that. And it started with a summer job, a mop, and one moment of weakness that a 16-year-old boy never forgot for the rest of his life. Stay with us for the whole story, because the ending will stay with you long after the video is over. The year is 1988. Newark, New Jersey does not care about your dreams. It is loud and broke and hot in the summer, and the streets are full of kids who want more than what they were handed, but cannot yet see the door that gets them there. Vacant lots sit between corner stores. Music leaks from open windows. Everyone is working on something. A plan, a hustle, a way out. And most of them will tell you about it if you stand still long enough. Nobody is standing still. And then there is Shaquille O'Neal. He is 16 years old. He is already 6 feet 10 inches tall and weighs over 240 pounds. His feet are size 22. When he walks into a room, people notice. Not because he is famous, not yet, but because the room seems to get smaller the moment he enters it. He walks down a Newark sidewalk and strangers move without being asked. He ducks through doorways out of habit. He has been doing it so long it feels normal. He is not famous. He is just enormous. And he is bored. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, is a woman who does not believe in bored. She is strict and warm and completely serious about the kind of man her son is going to become. She watches him drift through the early weeks of that summer. Too much sitting, too much doing nothing. And she makes a decision the way Lucille always makes decisions. Quietly and without negotiation. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, is a U.S. Army sergeant currently stationed overseas. Philip is the kind of man whose voice alone straightens a spine. But Philip is not here, so Lucille handles it herself. She calls a woman from church whose husband owns a car wash 3 blocks from the highway. That car wash is called Dupri's Clean and Shine. It sits on South Orange Avenue. It is not much to look at. The sign out front is missing 2 letters, and nobody has rushed to fix them. The vacuum hoses drip. The windows of the main office have not been cleaned in a season, which is something for a car wash. The floor inside that office tilts slightly to the left, like the building has been leaning on one elbow for too long and forgotten how to straighten up, but the lights are on. The doors open at 7 a.m., 6 days a week, without fail. That is because of Cornelius Dupri. Everyone calls him Neil. He is 40 years old in the summer of 1988. He is a black man from a small town outside Savannah, Georgia, who came north in 1972 carrying $11 and a cardboard suitcase held shut with a leather belt. He worked a factory line for 4 years, then a loading dock for 3 more. Then he spent 7 years saving every dollar he could keep until he had enough to buy this car wash. This specific, imperfect, slightly tilted car wash, and put his name on the sign. He has a daughter named Priscilla, age 9, who rides her bike in the parking lot after school. His wife, Dorothy, works the front register on Saturdays and Sundays. She keeps the candy dish full and knows every regular customer by name. Neil runs Dupri's Clean and Shine the way Philip Harrison runs a unit, with structure, with standards, and with absolutely no tolerance for people who think the rules apply to everyone except them. When Shaquille O'Neal walks through the front door for the first time on a Monday morning in June, Neil is standing behind the counter, going through the week's supply order. He looks up. He looks at the boy for a long, quiet moment. The boy fills the doorframe. "You as big as a house," Neil says. It is not a compliment or an insult. It is an observation, stated plainly, the way Neil states everything. "Yes, sir," Shaq says. "Can you work as hard as one holds up?" Shaq blinks. It is not a question he has been asked before. "I guess we'll find out," he says. Neil reaches behind the counter and holds out a mop. Shaq takes it. That is the beginning. What Neil does not know yet, and will not discover for 30 years, is that this oversized teenager is already carrying something he will one day leave behind in this very building. The mop is old. The handle is cracked near the middle, wrapped in electrical tape to hold it together. The head is gray and heavy with years of use. Shaq holds it in his enormous hand and it looks like a toy, like something a giant picked up from a dollhouse and is pretending to use. Neil points to the far end of the wash bay. "Start there," he says. "Work toward the drain. Don't push the water, pull it." Shaq nods. He starts there. He works toward the drain. He does not pull the water. He pushes it. Neil watches from the doorway for exactly 4 seconds, then walks over without a word, puts his hand over Shaq's on the mop handle, and shows him the motion. Once, slowly. Then he steps back and goes inside. That is the first lesson. It is not about mopping. It is about the fact that Neil Dupri will show you how to do something correctly exactly 1 time. After that, it is your job to remember. The summer of 1988, inside Dupri's Clean and Shine, is hot, loud, and relentless. Shaq works 6 days a week. He arrives at 7 a.m. He leaves at 5:30 p.m. He earns $3.75 an hour, the minimum wage in New Jersey at the time. His first paycheck is $121.50 before taxes. He holds it in both hands in the parking lot after Neil hands it to him on a Friday afternoon and looks at it for a long moment. It is the first money he has ever earned, not received, not been given, earned, with his back and his hands, and 10.5 hours a day in the summer heat of Newark, New Jersey. He folds it carefully and puts it in his pocket and does not spend a single dollar of it for 4 days because he wants to keep the feeling a little longer. Neil does not treat Shaq like a celebrity in the making. This is important, because Shaq is used to a certain kind of treatment. Teachers let things slide. because managing a student his size feels complicated. Coaches bend the rules because losing him is unthinkable. Other kids on the street give him space before he even asks for it. The world has been quietly making exceptions for Shaquille O'Neal since he was tall enough to require them. Neil Dupri does not make exceptions. One afternoon in the middle of July, Shaq is cleaning a red Ford pickup truck in Bay 2. The sun is pounding the concrete. His shirt is soaked through. The truck is filthy. Road salt and mud packed into every wheel well. And Shaq is tired and hot, and convinced the truck customer will never notice if the wheel wells are not perfect. So he skips them. He finishes the rest of the truck. It shines. He steps back and looks at it and tells himself it is fine. Neil comes out of the office 12 minutes later. He walks slowly around the truck. He crouches down, the easy crouch of a man whose knees still cooperate in 1988, and looks at the wheel wells. He stands up. He looks at Shaq. "Inside," he says. "The office is small and warm and smells like motor oil and old paper." Neil sits behind the scratched desk. Shaq sits across from him in a chair that is genuinely too small for his body. His knees are near his chin. Neil folds his hands on the desk. "You think you can coast because God gave you size?" he asks. Shaq says nothing. There is no good answer, and he knows it. "Size is a gift," Neil says. His voice is not raised. It is level and clear, the way a man speaks when he wants every word to land and stick. What you do with it is your choice. And right now you are choosing lazy. The word sits in the room between them. Lazy. Shaq is not used to that word being aimed at him. He wants to argue. He wants to say, "The truck looked fine. The customer would never know." It is 94 degrees outside, and he has been here since before breakfast. He says, "None of it." He stands up, goes back outside, and cleans every wheel well on that truck until they are spotless. He does not cut corners again that summer. There are other lessons, smaller ones that stick just as deep. Neil teaches him to count the register at the end of each day. Real money, real math, no rounding, no guessing. He teaches him to say good morning first, every time, to every customer, before they say a single word. He shows him that a machine fixed quietly and correctly is worth 10 times more than a speech about fixing it. Dorothy Dupri feeds Shaq lunch almost every day because she looks at his size and makes a practical decision. She brings ham sandwiches on white bread and sweet tea in a paper cup. She sets them on the counter without announcement and goes back to what she was doing. Shaq will talk about those sandwiches in interviews 20 years later. He will smile when he does it, the slow, private smile of a man tasting a memory. Priscilla Dupri, 9 years old and completely certain of her own opinions, rides her bicycle around the parking lot and tells Shaq his mop technique is still not right. He laughs every time. It is the most honest feedback he gets all summer. At the end of August, Neil pays Shaq his final check and holds out his hand. The handshake is firm. 2 seconds. Direct eye contact. "You did good," Neil says. "Come back if you need work." Shaq nods. He takes the check. He walks out through the door and into the bright end of summer. He does not come back. Life, as it turns out, has other plans. The world does not wait for anyone. Not even for a 16-year-old boy from Newark, who is 6 feet 10 and still growing, and has no idea yet what his life is about to become. By the time the leaves change in Newark that fall of 1988, Shaquille O'Neal is already gone. His family moves to San Antonio, Texas. Philip Harrison's military posting has shifted, and the family follows. The way military families always follow. Quickly, completely, without much ceremony. New city, new school, new start. The new school is Robert G. Cole High School on the east side of San Antonio. It is a small school attached to a military base. It does not look like the kind of place that produces legends. But Shaq walks into the gymnasium, and the coach looks up from his clipboard And something changes in the room immediately and permanently. He dominates. That is the only word for it. He dominates so completely and so consistently that by his senior year, recruiters are calling the school office, writing letters, showing up in person with folders full of promises. Universities across the country want him. He listens to all of them. He chooses Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge in 1989. He plays under Coach Dale Brown, who has been chasing this moment since he first saw Shaq play at a military base in Germany years earlier and told people about it and had nobody believe him. They believe him now. At LSU, Shaq becomes one of the most talked about college players in the country. The crowds are enormous. The attention is constant. The future feels like something physical, like a door swinging open faster and faster, and all he has to do is walk through. In 1992, the Orlando Magic select him with the first overall pick in the NBA draft. He is 20 years old. He signs a contract worth $40 million over 7 years. After that, the years move the way a river moves when the land drops sharply, fast, loud, and impossible to stop. 3 championship rings with the Los Angeles Lakers, 2000, 2001, 2002. Then a 4th with the Miami Heat in 2004. A rap album that actually sells. Movies, television. Shaquille O'Neal branded sneakers on the feet of kids in cities he has never visited. A doctoral degree in education from Barry University in Miami Shores in 2012, because he decides one morning that finishing what he started matters, and Shaq is not a man who argues with himself for long. The world is enormous and bright and full of noise, and his name is in the middle of all of it. Neil Dupri is not part of any of this. Neil is in Newark, still on South Orange Avenue, still opening at 7 a.m., still shaking every customer's hand with 2 seconds of direct eye contact. But the years are heavier for Neil than they look. A larger franchise car wash opens 2 miles away in the early 2000s, and the customers drift toward it the way customers always drift. Toward newer, toward shinier, toward the place with the loyalty card and the automated text reminders. The equipment at Dupri's Clean and Shine gets older. Parts get harder to justify. The numbers on the page at the end of each month get smaller and quieter, and harder to look at. Dorothy passes away from a stroke in 2009. She is there on a Tuesday and gone by Thursday, and the candy dish on the front counter stays full for 3 weeks after because Neil cannot bring himself to empty it. Priscilla moves to Atlanta. She calls every Sunday without fail. Neil keeps the car wash open because closing it means something he is not willing to mean. By 2019, the building looks exactly like what it is, a place that has outlasted its era. Still standing, still open, still run by a man who has never once been late to anything in his life. And then, on a cold Thursday morning in March, a black SUV turns into the parking lot. March 14th, 2019. A Thursday. The sky over Newark is the color of old concrete, flat and gray and giving nothing away. The temperature is 38 degrees, cold enough that the breath of anyone standing outside comes out in small white clouds. Spring has been promised but has not yet arrived. The trees along South Orange Avenue are still bare. The pigeons on the roof of Dupri's Clean and Shine are fluffed up against the cold, hunched into themselves like tiny, unhappy commuters waiting on a train that is running late. Neil Dupri has been here since 6:45 a.m. He is always here before 7 o'clock, has been for 30 years. He unlocks the front gate, checks the equipment, runs a short cycle on the wash system to make sure nothing froze overnight, and puts the coffee on. The coffee maker is the one modern thing in the office. A small black machine Priscilla sent him 2 Christmases ago with a note that said, "Please, stop drinking gas station coffee, Daddy." He uses it every morning. The coffee it produces is still not very good, but it is hot, and it is his, and that is enough. By 9 a.m., he is outside. He is crouched beside the front wheel of a silver Honda Civic, working a stiff brush along the base of the tire where road salt has crusted through the winter. His knees register their complaints the way they always do in the cold, dully, constantly, like a radio left on in another room. His back has been sending similar messages since February. He ignores both of them with the practiced ease of a 71-year-old man who decided long ago that his body's opinion was not the deciding vote. The parking lot is quiet. A pigeon investigates something near the drain. The brush scrapes against the wheel well in a steady rhythm. The bare trees move slightly in the wind. Then he hears it. A vehicle turning off South Orange Avenue into the lot. Heavy, the sound of a large engine dropping to idle. Tires on cold asphalt. Neil assumes it is a customer. He finishes the stroke of the brush, sets it against the tire, and begins the process of standing. The careful, staged process that belongs to a man whose knees have filed multiple formal complaints. He straightens. He turns around. The SUV is black. It is large the way that very expensive things are large. Not showy, not loud. Just definitively, quietly enormous. It sits in the middle of the parking lot, like it belongs anywhere it decides to park. The engine goes quiet. A moment passes. The driver's side door opens. What steps out of that door is not easily described to someone who has not seen it in person. Shaquille O'Neal, at 47 years old, is 6 feet 11 inches tall and 325 pounds, and he unfolds himself from that vehicle the way weather unfolds. Gradually, and then all at once, he has to dip his head below the doorframe. He straightens up slowly. He is wearing a gray hoodie and dark pants and white New Balance sneakers, and he looks, in this moment, exactly like what he is. A man who came somewhere privately, without announcement, because he needed to, and not because anyone told him to. He stands beside the SUV. He looks at the sign. Dupri's Clean and Shine. All letters present. The lights are off in the daytime, but the sign is intact. He looks at the building, the cracked paint on the exterior wall, the window of the office with its thin film of age, the bay doors, one of them slightly off its track, the parking lot with its faded lines and its patient pigeon. He looks at the old man standing beside the Honda Civic. Neil Dupri looks back. The brush is in his hand. Then it is not. It hits the ground beside the tire, and neither of them hears it land because neither of them is paying attention to anything except each other across 20 feet of cold Newark parking lot. Neil's mouth opens. Nothing comes out. He will count the seconds later, alone, replaying it in the quiet of his house on Maple Avenue. He will get to 28 before the memory of his own voice returns to him. 28 seconds of silence. Of 31 years crossing a parking lot. Shaquille O'Neal walks toward him slowly. He is looking at Neil the way a person looks at something they were afraid might not still be there. His hands are in the front pocket of the hoodie. His breath comes out in slow white clouds in the cold March air. He stops 3 feet away. He looks down, because he always has to look down, at almost everyone, everywhere. And his voice, when it comes, is quiet and without performance. "Neil," he says. Just the name, nothing attached to it. No explanation, no preamble, no speech prepared. Just the name of a man he has owed something to for 31 years, said plainly in a parking lot in Newark on a cold Thursday morning. Neil finds his voice somewhere deep in his chest, where he has been keeping it. "Boy," he says, the word carries everything. The summer of 1988, the mop, the red Ford pickup, the ham sandwiches, Dorothy, the years. All of it folded into one word spoken by a 71-year-old man who is trying very hard not to come apart in his own parking lot. They embrace. Shaq folds himself downward. Neil's arms reach up and around as far as they go. It is not a clean hug. It is the kind that does not care about geometry. Neither of them speaks for a moment. "I was in the area," Shaq says finally. It is not entirely true. He has been thinking about this visit for weeks. A phone call with his mother in late February circled back to the summer of 1988, the way conversations with Lucille sometimes do. Directly and without warning, she mentioned Neil by name. She asked if Shaq had ever gone back. He had not. He asked his assistant to find the address. He drove himself. No cameras, no publicist, no post planned. Just him, and the memory of a mop, and a lesson about wheel wells, and a man who told him the truth when the truth was the harder thing to say. "You look rich," Neil tells him. Shaq laughs. "The big one. The famous one that has filled arenas and television sets, and now fills a small cracked parking lot in Newark, and startles the pigeon off the ground entirely." "Come inside," Neil says. "Coffee's not great, but it's hot." They walk toward the office together, the old man and the giant, side by side, their breath making clouds in the cold morning air. Shaq reaches the office door and ducks through it, out of 30 years of habit. Inside, the floor still tilts slightly to the left. And in the far corner, near the base of the filing cabinet, one floorboard sits just slightly higher than all the rest. The office has not changed in any way that matters. The desk is the same, heavy and scratched and solid in the way that old things are solid. Not because they are perfect, but because they have survived everything that tried to finish them. The wood paneling on the walls has darkened with years, deepened from light pine to something closer to amber. The Georgia Bulldogs calendar on the wall shows March 2019, the current month, hung in the same spot calendars have always hung in this office. The window behind the desk has the same thin film on the glass that makes the light coming through it look like it is arriving from somewhere slightly further away than the parking lot actually is. Dorothy's photograph hangs near the window, a simple gold frame. Her face in it is warm and direct and completely alive, the way photographs of people who are gone sometimes carry more presence than the room itself. Neil has positioned it so that it catches the morning light. Shaq sees it the moment he straightens up inside the doorway, and he looks at it for a moment before he looks at anything else. "She looks exactly like I remember her," he says. "She was better than I deserved," Neil says, and moves to pour the coffee. Shaq takes the chair across from the desk. It is the same chair, the one too small for his body. His knees rise toward his chest at an angle that would be comical if anyone were watching, but no one is watching. He shifts his weight, and the chair makes a sound of deep structural concern, and then holds. He sets both enormous hands on his knees and looks around the room slowly. At the calendar, at the paneling, at Dorothy's photograph, at the desk. The way a person looks around a room they visited in a dream and are now surprised to find real. His eyes move to the floor. He is not looking for anything. He is just looking the way you look at a floor you once swept every morning for an entire summer, remembering the motion of it, the weight of the mop handle, the way the water moved toward the drain. His eyes travel the boards from the door toward the far corner and then stop, near the base of the filing cabinet. One floorboard sitting just slightly higher than the ones around it. Not dramatically, not the kind of thing a stranger would notice. But Shaq is not a stranger to this floor. He spent a summer on his hands and knees, cleaning it, sweeping it, learning its geography the way you learn the geography of any place you inhabit daily without choosing to. He sees it. He sets down his coffee cup. He stands up, the chair releasing a quiet sound of relief, and crosses the small office in 2 steps. He crouches down in the corner, folds himself toward the floor, and looks at the board up close. The edges are slightly worn. Not from foot traffic. The filing cabinet sits directly beside it, and nobody walks there. Worn from being lifted, from being raised and replaced, over a long period of time. "Neil," Shaq says. His voice is careful. The voice of a man who has noticed something and is not yet sure what noticing it means. Neil comes to the doorway between the small back area and the main office. He is holding both coffee cups. He looks at Shaq crouched in the corner. He looks at the board. He goes very still. Something moves across his face in the silence of the office. And it is not a simple thing. It is not guilt, and it is not surprise, and it is not relief, though it contains pieces of all three. It is the expression of a man who has been quietly carrying something for a very long time and has just watched someone walk directly to the spot where he put it down. "What is under there, Neil?" Shaq says. It is not quite a question. Neil sets both coffee cups on the desk. He crosses the office slowly. He lowers himself to one knee beside Shaq, a process that involves more negotiation between intention and body than it once did, and reaches his fingertips to the edge of the raised board. It lifts cleanly, easily, the way something lifts when it has been lifted many times before. Beneath it is a gap between the floorboard and the concrete base below. Not large, perhaps 4 inches deep and 12 inches wide. The kind of gap that exists in old buildings everywhere and means nothing unless someone decides it means something. Someone decided. Inside the gap, sitting on the concrete, is an object wrapped first in a folded square of cotton cloth, white once, now cream with age. And inside that, a clear plastic zip bag sealed carefully shut. Neil reaches in and takes it out. He unwraps the cotton cloth on the floor between them. Slowly, the way you unwrap something you have unwrapped before. Inside the zip bag are 2 things. A piece of paper, folded twice. And beneath the paper, held together with a rubber band that has gone brittle with decades, a small roll of cash. Neil opens the zip bag. He takes out the paper. He unfolds it with both hands and holds it out toward Shaq without reading it himself, because he already knows every word on it by heart. He has known them since 2003. The handwriting is young. The letters lean forward urgently, like they were written in a hurry by someone whose hand could not keep up with what they needed to say. "Mr. Neil, I took $22 from the register on August 3rd. I was going to pay it back before summer ended, but I got scared to tell you. I am sorry. You told me not to cut corners, and I cut one that was worse than any dirty wheel well. I am leaving this here because I cannot look you in the eye and say it. I will make it right someday, I promise." Shaq, 1988. The room is absolutely quiet. Shaq reads it once. The words go in slowly, the way cold water goes in, felt in the chest before anywhere else. He reads it again. His eyes move across the leaning letters, and he knows with complete certainty, without remembering the specific moment, that this is true. He knows the feeling described in those lines. The sick weight of a small wrong carried out the door and across 31 years of becoming someone the world would recognize. He carried it without knowing he was carrying it. The roll of cash sits on the cotton cloth between them on the floor. $22 in old bills, soft as paper napkins with age. Shaq looks at the money. He looks at the note. He looks at Neil. "You found this in 2003, he says. "It is not a guess." "When I was redoing the floor after the drain issue," Neil says quietly, "board came up and there it was. I knew straight away who left it. Wasn't anyone else it could have been." Shaq's jaw tightens once and then releases. "Why didn't you call me?" Neil looks at him steadily. "Call you and say what exactly?" "You were winning championships. You were on every television in the country." He pauses. "Your mama raised you right. I knew you knew what you did the second after you did it. The note told me everything I needed to know about who you were becoming." He reaches out and touches the edge of the paper gently with one finger. "I kept it," Neil says, "because I had a feeling that one day it would be worth a great deal more than $22. The office is warm and still, and smells of coffee and old wood and something else. Something that does not have a name, but that both men can feel sitting in the air between them on the floor of a building that has been quietly holding this moment in place for 31 years. Shaq's voice, when it comes, is not entirely steady. It is worth a great deal more than $22, he says. Neil nods once. I know, he says. I always knew it would be. He does not call a contractor that afternoon. He does not pull out his phone in the office and start making things happen while Neil watches, which would turn a private moment into a performance. And Shaq knows the difference between those two things better than most people assume he does. He drinks the rest of his bad coffee. He stays another 40 minutes. He helps Neil run a wash cycle on a customer's Dodge pickup, standing in the bay in his gray hoodie, guiding the vehicle forward with hand signals the way he watched workers do it in the summer of 1988. And Neil watches from the side with an expression that is difficult to describe, but that belongs entirely to that moment. Then Shaq embraces him again in the parking lot. Same geometry as before. Same problem with the height difference. Same complete indifference to the geometry on both sides. He gets in the black SUV. He drives out of the lot and onto South Orange Avenue, and does not look back, because looking back is not the direction this is moving. The first call happens the following morning. It is to Priscilla Dupri, in Atlanta, Georgia. Shaq gets her number from a contact he tracks down through two intermediaries, because Neil, when asked the previous afternoon, handed it over with the expression of a man who is not entirely sure he is allowed to want help this much, and is offering the number before he can talk himself out of it. Priscilla answers on the third ring. Her voice is cautious, in the way that anyone's voice is cautious when an unfamiliar number calls and the person on the other end opens with a claim that would not make the list of things you expect to hear on a Thursday morning in Atlanta. My name is Shaquille O'Neal, he tells her. Your father gave me my first job when I was 16 years old. I believe he saved me from myself that summer, without ever knowing he did it. I would very much like to return that favor if you will let me. There is silence on the line. Then Priscilla Dupri cries, not a small polite cry, the real kind. The kind that has been waiting behind 3 years of Sunday phone calls watching her father get older and prouder and more alone in that building. The kind that comes out when someone finally says the thing you did not know you needed to hear, said by someone outside the family. She cries and Shaq waits, and does not fill the silence with words, because the silence is hers, and she has earned it. When she is ready, she says, "What do you need from me?" And Shaq almost smiles at the question, because it is the right one, and she comes by the right questions honestly. Just say yes, he tells her. I will handle the rest. The second call is to a man named Terrence Webb. Terrence is a contractor based in Newark. A 52-year-old man who has worked South Orange Avenue and the surrounding blocks for 23 years. He is not the cheapest contractor in the city. He is the best one Neil has ever used, which Shaq knows, because he asked Neil that same afternoon which contractor he trusted, and Neil answered, without hesitating, the way Neil answers everything he actually knows. Terrence picks up. Shaq explains what he needs. Terrence is quiet for a moment on his end, and then says, Neil Dupri's place on South Orange? Yes, Shaq says. Good man, Terrence says simply. When do you want me there? Over the 6 weeks that follow, quietly and without any announcement to anyone outside the small circle of people who need to know, the following things happen. The compressor is replaced. Terrence Webb sources the parts through a supplier he has used for a decade, manages the installation himself with one assistant, and the wash system runs clean and full and strong for the first time since October. Neil stands in the bay on the morning it is tested and listens to it run and does not say anything for a while. The sign is restored. All letters returned. Dupri's clean and shine burning complete and lit at night for the first time in 8 years. Terrence's crew also addresses the floor. The tilt, present since 1994, caused by a drainage shift that was patched but never properly corrected, is fixed over 2 days. New boards are laid in the corner where the old ones were raised. The office stands level for the first time in a quarter century. Not one word of any of it appears publicly during those 6 weeks. No post, no statement, no photograph taken for anyone's benefit but their own. Priscilla flies up from Atlanta. With Marcus and Deshawn on the weekend, the sign goes back up. The twin boys are 6 years old and completely unaware of the history of the parking lot they are running circles in. Neil stands between the lot and the street in the early evening and looks at the sign lit against the darkening sky, and his grandsons orbit him like small planets, and he does not say anything for a very long time. He does not need to. The story surfaces 6 weeks later through a journalist named Angela Reeves, a staff writer who covers Newark for a local publication called Tapinto Newark. She hears it secondhand from Terrence Webb over lunch, follows it to Neil, and calls him for comment. Neil picks up the phone. He listens to her questions. He thinks for a moment. Then he gives her 4 words. He remembered where he came from. Angela Reeves visits Dupri's Clean and Shine on a Wednesday morning in May 2019. She is 34 years old and has covered Newark for Tapinto Newark since 2011. She has written about city council votes that changed neighborhoods. She has written about school closures that broke them. She has written about flooding on streets where the same families have lived for 3 generations and keep coming back because Newark is theirs, and leaving it would feel like losing something that cannot be replaced. She knows this city the way you know a person you have chosen to stay close to through difficult years. Not perfectly, not without frustration, but deeply and with genuine love. She has not written anything quite like this. She parks on South Orange Avenue and sits in her car for a moment before going in. She has already spoken to Neil twice on the phone. She has already spoken to Terrence Webb, who told her the story over a plate of rice and beans at a diner on Ferry Street, with the straightforward pride of a man who did good work and is glad someone is writing it down. She has already tried twice to reach Shaquille O'Neal's representatives and received polite non-responses both times, which she takes not as a door closing, but as a confirmation that the man who drove to Newark alone in a gray hoodie on a cold Thursday in March is not particularly interested in being celebrated for it. She goes inside. Neil meets her at the door. He is wearing a clean collared shirt, which she suspects is on her account, though he will not admit it. He shows her the bay, the new compressor running smooth and full, the wash system cycling without complaint. He shows her the exterior of the building, the sign complete and bright, even in the daytime. He shows her the parking lot with its freshly painted lines. Another thing Terrence's crew addressed without being asked specifically because Terrence Webb is that kind of contractor. Then he takes her into the office. She notices the floor first. The new boards in the corner are slightly lighter than the ones around them. Fresh wood not yet aged to match its surroundings. The way new things always announce themselves quietly before they settle in. The office stands level. She does not know it used to tilt, and so she cannot appreciate the correction the way Neil can. But she notices that the room feels solid and clean and more permanent than old buildings usually feel. Then she sees what is on the desk. In the far corner of the scratched, heavy, surviving desk that has sat in this office since 1981. The same desk where a 16-year-old boy sat with his knees near his chin, while a man told him that size is a gift and laziness is a choice. There is a picture frame. Simple. Black. Glass front. No label beneath it. No explanation offered to the room. Inside the frame, centered and held flat behind the glass, is a piece of paper. The paper is old. The fold lines are soft with decades of being opened and refolded and opened again. The handwriting on it is young and urgent. The letters leaning forward like they are trying to outrun something. The ink slightly faded, but every word completely legible. Angela steps closer. She reads it once. She reads it again. She stands in the middle of the office for a moment with her notebook open and her pen not moving, and the morning light coming through the old window falling across the frame on the desk, and she understands. completely and without needing anyone to explain it. Why Neil Dupri kept this for 31 years. Why he checked on it. Why he framed it. She looks up at Neil, who is standing near the door with his hands folded, watching her read it with the patience of a man who has already understood everything she is only just arriving at. "Can I photograph it?" she asks. Neil considers this for a moment with the seriousness it deserves. Then he nods. "That's what it's there for," he says. "So people can see what a person looks like when they're trying to become who they're supposed to be." Angela asks him one more question before she leaves. She asks what he will do with the frame when the story runs. Whether he will put it somewhere else, somewhere more prominent, or keep it on the desk. Neil looks at the frame for a moment. "It stays on the desk," he says. "That's where the desk is. That's where the work gets done. It belongs where the work gets done." Outside, the sign is lit. Dupri's Clean and Shine. All letters present. All lights on. The parking lot lines fresh and white and straight. The compressor running in the bay, steady as a heartbeat. The sound of a thing that has been fixed properly and knows it. On Maple Avenue, the sweet peas Dorothy planted along the back fence come up again that spring, the way they always come up. Without being asked, without ceremony, because that is what living things do when the ground has been cared for and the conditions are right. In Atlanta, Priscilla Dupri tells her twin boys that their grandfather built something from nothing and kept it standing through everything, and that those two facts together are the definition of a word she wants them to understand before they understand almost anything else. The word is dignity. Marcus and Deshawn are 6 years old, and they listen the way 6-year-olds listen. Partially, incompletely, storing it somewhere they cannot yet access but will. They will access it later. They always do. And in a small office in Newark, New Jersey, on a desk that has survived 41 years and one very large teenager and more difficult mornings than anyone counted, a framed note sits in the corner where the light finds it. $22 worth of paper, 31 years worth of waiting. And the proof, plain and handwritten and leaning forward in its urgency, that some debts are not about money at all. They are about the moment a person decides, quietly and without audience, who they are going to be. Shaq decided in 1988, in a tilted office on South Orange Avenue, the second after he did the wrong thing and felt the full weight of it land in his chest. He just needed 31 years and a raised floorboard to finish saying so. The sign stays lit, the floor stays level, the note stays on the desk. And Neil Dupri opens at 7 a.m., 6 days a week without fail. The way he always has, the way he always will, for as long as the lights are on and the work is there to be done. And that is the story of Neil Dupri and Shaquille O'Neal. A 16-year-old boy with a mop, an old man with a standard, a floorboard that held a secret for 31 years, and a debt that was never really about $22. Sometimes the people who shape us the most are not the ones the world remembers. They are the ones who handed us a mop on a hot summer morning and refused to let us be less than we were capable of being. Neil never made the headlines. He never asked for anything. He just opened at 7 a.m., 6 days a week, and taught a future champion what it actually means to show up. That is a kind of greatness the world does not celebrate enough. So before you go, drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from. We have people tuning in from all over the world, and we love knowing where our community calls home. It takes 2 seconds, and it means everything to us. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone in your own life who handed you your first lesson without asking for any credit, hit that like button right now. Every single like helps this story reach one more person who needs to hear it today. And if you believe that kindness deserves more airtime than it gets, that the Neil Duprits of this world deserve to be seen and celebrated, subscribe to this channel and become part of a community that is here for exactly that. For the real stories, the human ones, the ones that stay with you, The next story is already on your screen right now. Click it. We promise it is worth your time.